Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this very special briefing on the U.S. Small Business Administration's new Restaurant Revitalization Fund with the NGLCC and the Public-Private Strategies Institute. I'm now going to turn the program over to my colleague, Sabrina.
Thank you so much, Stefan. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sabrina Kent. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Senior Vice President overseeing supplier diversity at the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce. I am truly excited about today's national briefing on the SBA's new Restaurant Revitalization Fund, brought to you by the NGLCC, SBA, and our partners at PPSI. In the American Rescue Plan Act, signed into law on March 11th, Congress appropriated $28.6 billion for the SBA toward relief through the Restaurant Revitalization Fund program until funds are expended. Fund recipients are not required to repay the funding as long as the funds are used for eligible purposes no later than March 11, 2023. Today's briefing is a part of the administration's national outreach to empower small business owners with educational resources to learn more about opportunities on how to apply and navigate the application process. We are so proud at NGLCC to collaborate on today's program, and we have some incredible partners who have helped along the way. So I want to take this opportunity to not only thank the SBA and PPSI, but the incredible partners from the NGLCC affiliate chamber cohort who have signed on in support of today's program, knowing the importance that today's program has for their local members and restaurateurs. So bear with me, I want to make sure everybody gets the moment to be recognized here, starting with the Austin LGBT Chamber of Commerce, the Charlotte LGBT Chamber of Commerce, Colorado LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce, Connecticut Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, the Desert Business Association, the Detroit Regional LGBT Chamber of Commerce, the Diversity Chamber of Ohio, ECCDC, the Equality Chamber of DC, the Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Nevada, the Golden Gate Business Association, the Greater Fort Lauderdale LGBT Chamber, the Greater Houston LGBT Chamber of Commerce, the Greater Phoenix Equality Chamber of Commerce, the GSBA in Seattle, Washington, the Gulf South LGBT Chamber of Commerce, the Independence Business Alliance in Philadelphia, the Keystone Business Alliance, the Long Beach LGBTQ+ Chamber of Commerce, the Massachusetts LGBT Chamber of Commerce, the Miami-Dade Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, the Mid-American LGBT Chamber of Commerce, the New Jersey LGBT Chamber of Commerce, NGLCC New York, North Texas LGBT Chamber of Commerce, Out Georgia Business Alliance, Sacramento Rainbow Chamber of Commerce, San Diego Equality Business Association, the Tampa Bay LGBTQ Chamber, the Three Rivers Business Alliance, the Upstate LGBT+ Chamber of Commerce of South Carolina, and the Wisconsin LGBT Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much to our stakeholders for being a part of this, for engaging and inviting your members across the country to take part in today's program. So before we get started, a few housekeeping items. Please note that this is being recorded and we're also streaming on Facebook Live. After today's briefing, we'll send you a link to the recording, which will also be available on NGLCC's YouTube page. There will be the opportunity for Q&A at the end of today's program, so please be sure to use the chat and Q&A functions here on Zoom to submit your questions for our special guest from the SBA. And in that line, we do have some very amazing folks with us today to help kick things off. And before I introduce our guest of honor, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to a few folks. First, Rhett Buttle, Renee Johnson, and Stefan Jordan from PPSI, who are the magicians behind the scenes that are making this operation move. Thank you so much for coming forward with this opportunity alongside the SBA and for really being the ones that are putting all the ducks in a row to make today happen. I want to say a big thank you to Lauren Schweppe from Team NGLCC. She's our Educational Initiatives Manager, and she's been in gear helping support and get the word out to all of our stakeholder groups over the last several days to take part in this. And you'll hear from Lauren later today. So thank you, Lauren. Really appreciate you and your work, as well as all of you on Team NGLCC who contributed to today's program. I also want to thank Mark Madrid, who is the Associate Administrator at the Office of Entrepreneurial Development at the SBA. We have had a long history of working with Mark in his days at the Latino Business Action Network, and prior to that, in his Hispanic Chamber days as well. Mark is an incredible member, ally, and advocate for all diverse business communities. We are so excited, Mark, for you and your new role, and can't thank you enough for your support and partnership over the years and what will continue to blossom and grow in your new work at the SBA. I also want to say a big thank you to Reggie Greer, the White House Senior Advisor on LGBTQ+ issues, and many NGLCC stakeholders will remember Reggie from our Crossroads and Conversations event a few months back when Reggie was still in between after his role at Biden for president. Reggie has been a great ally to the LGBT business community, and we are very excited that last night we got confirmation Reggie wanted to be here to take part in today's program. So Reggie, thank you so much. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Isabella Casias Guzman, the 27th Administrator of the U.S. Small Business Administration, who was sworn in on Wednesday, March 17th, 2021. Administrator Guzman represents the more than 30 million U.S. small businesses and is committed to helping small business owners and entrepreneurs start, grow, and be resilient. A lifelong proponent of small businesses, the administrator grew up as the daughter of a small business owner and learned at a young age how important small businesses are to the communities they serve, the people they employ, and the economies they help power. NGLCC was proud to lead a coalition of diverse chambers and affiliates to support the confirmation of Administrator Guzman earlier this year. And we are so proud to have the administrator here with us today. So with that, Administrator, I will turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sabrina, for that wonderful introduction. And thanks to the National LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce for everything you do to support our nation's LGBTQ entrepreneurs. Your support and partnership are really critical to us at the SBA. So I look forward to a continued partnership as we work together to ensure that our nation's diverse small businesses have a seat at the table. And I also like to welcome the great number of NGLCC US affiliates here today as well. Thanks for your work on the ground, working directly with our small businesses. We know that the LGBTQ business economy is estimated at $1.7 trillion annually, and we commend the 1.4 million LGBTQ business owners in the US to create over 300,000 jobs annually. So thank you for all the work that you do at the Chamber. Over the past year, our nation's restaurants and other food and beverage small businesses have faced enormous challenges. And as California's small business advocate, and now as the voice for America's 30 million small businesses and innovative startups, I've seen how food and beverage businesses in particular have pivoted and adapted to the changing marketplace, finding new ways to connect with customers while covering expenses and supplies, changing their operations in the supply chain, connecting to all their consumers in the marketplace and then their communities. And I have been inspired by the grit, the creativity that you've displayed. And today I want you to know that help customized for your sector is here. And thanks to the American Rescue Plan passed by Congress and signed into law by President Biden last month, the SBA's Restaurant Revitalization Fund will be giving out $28.6 billion, as mentioned, in targeted relief through grants, not loans, to restaurants and other food and beverage businesses. And the grant application portal will be available starting Monday, May 3rd, with registration already beginning today. And across all of our programs and policies, I want the SBA to be as entrepreneurial as the businesses we serve, just like all of you who have adapted to consumer needs and pivoted all year long to serve your clients during COVID. So we've designed the application for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund with restaurants and food and beverage businesses, our customers, the end users in mind, paying particular attention to the reality that you've faced over the past year and how you've been running your businesses in this new marketplace. My team will walk through all the great features of this program in a few minutes. I just wanted to share a couple of them with you to give you further insights into this new customer-first, technology-driven, and equitable approach at the SBA under my leadership. We've designed the RRF program to be tech smart. It has walk me through type assistance throughout the application to hover and guide you through. And the application should only take about 25 minutes. We've strived for that simplicity, balancing with the oversight to make sure that the funds get into the hands of the businesses who need it. We know so many businesses have adopted technology at high rates. I've always said that that's one of the silver linings of the pandemic. So we are integrating technology partners to increase entry points for this program. So in addition to being able to go direct to SBA.gov, we've also partnered with point of sale vendors to help you apply or get connected to the SBA portal where you're already doing business. Right now, we're partnering with Clover, Aloha, Square, and Toast, and we'll be adding new partners as we go. We've also eliminated, as I said, bureaucratic requirements, making it as simple as possible. For things that didn't make sense for your industry, we've tried to make it simple and remove them. And because we know that our smallest and underserved businesses, especially those owned by people of color, have suffered the most from the pandemic, and yet many have been unable to access relief. Congress understood all this when they included language in the American Rescue Plan that mandated a 21-day priority period for restaurants, food and beverage businesses owned by women, veterans, and socially or economically disadvantaged people. Congress also allocated $5 billion in set-aside specifically targeted to smaller businesses, and the SBA added another 4.5 for a total of $9.5 billion in set-asides for smaller firms. And they directed us to ensure a broad range of restaurants and food and beverage businesses were included. So food trucks, food carts, caterers, breweries, tap rooms, and many more are included. Our focus on reaching our smallest and underserved businesses is in line with the Biden-Harris administration's emphasis on equity, which is a vision that I'm committed to at the SBA. We know that all of our small businesses must be supported and given opportunities to succeed if our nation is going to thrive and retain our global competitiveness. And we know it's not just the design, but also the implementation and outreach, which is why today's event is so important and why we are prioritizing accessibility. The fund's online application portal is going to be available in English and Spanish, which is a first for us, the direct application. In addition, there's translation in the 8 additional required languages and support for up to 17 total. Our live customer service line is available from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday. So call if there's any questions or reach out to our district offices or resource partners or your chambers. In addition, we'll allow even phone access through that customer service line for those who are having difficulty accessing broadband in their communities, as we want to include all of our underserved populations. We're committed to bringing this customer-first approach, technology, and equity to all of our programs at the SBA so that our businesses can recover, start, grow, and build resilience. We know that SBA has offerings fit for your businesses beyond the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, or RRF. And we know that this pandemic, when it ends, because it'll end soon, thanks to the American Rescue Plan, the Biden-Harris administration Shots in Arms campaign, and the dedication of healthcare workers on the front lines. We know that you want to reopen fully and safely, and we're working hard and are committed to making that happen. We definitely want to be here to help you get back on your feet, be a part of your team, and ensure that restaurants, local food and beverage establishments can survive and once again define your neighborhoods and be the heart of your communities. Just thank you so much to NGLCC. You join me in being the advocate and voice for small businesses and helping them feel like the giants that we know that they are in our economy. And thank you all to the businesses who are joining here, taking proactive actions now to get ready to apply for this important program. I'm now going to turn it over to my incredible team. Our Associate Administrator for Entrepreneurial Development, Mark Madrid, is joining me here today. He oversees all of SBA's technical resources, our resource partners in the field, and that includes 900 small business development centers, 135 women's business centers, plus the SCORE chapters. So thank you, and keep up the hope, everyone. We're here to help.
Administrator Guzman, it is the highest honor imaginable to serve under your bold and demonstrated leadership. Family, I can tell you that Administrator Guzman, she sends the first email and the last email, and she hit the ground not running, but sprinting. Thank you, Administrator Guzman. Thank you for your commitment and your dedication to the restaurant sector. And I can't think of a better way to start a Friday. I know we've been up a few hours already, but with this community, our community. And as a proud member of the LGBTQ community, I can assure you that your voice matters to us. as demonstrated by Administrator Guzman. And thank you to the NGLCC, years of working together, and PPSI for mobilizing quickly to deliver this important webinar today, talking about this sector that means so much to our economy, this sector that has been hit hard with the pandemic, and we're committed to recovering. And so I am here along with some other members of the queer community to ensure that your voice is at the table. And now I am energized to introduce Reggie Greer, Senior Advisor at the White House. And in his role, this particular distinguished individual and leader will promote LGBTQ+ inclusion within Joe Biden's administration. And the president, wow, what an incredible asset to the administration and to all of us. He will act as a bridge between the community and the White House. And Greer joined Biden's presidential campaign in March 2020, where his work was instrumental in building the organization's LGBTQ+ elected officials network and its candidate training, which encourages queer people to run for office. And it now is my honor, Reggie, to introduce you to the family. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Associate Administrator, and thank you so much to the Administrator for just those remarks this morning. This is a good day for our community. My name is Reggie Greer. I am the Senior Advisor on LGBTQ+ engagement at the White House. It is an honor to be joining you all this morning. I just want to start off by just reiterating President Biden's commitment to the LGBTQ+ community. As you saw in his address to the joint session of Congress on Wednesday, LGBTQ+ equality and equity are centerpieces of everything he is doing within the administration. He encouraged Congress to pass the Equality Act, but just as importantly, he reached out to our community, telling not only LGBTQ+ people around the country, but specifically trans people and trans youth that he has our back. And through the work of the SBA and other key agencies around the administration, I hope what you're seeing is a commitment not only to equality and equity, but a commitment to ensuring that our community is in every debate within the administration. So as the administrator said,
Well, thank you, Reggie. We unfortunately are experiencing a little technical difficulties. We will now go to Nicola from the SBA, who has a presentation on the Restaurant Revitalization Fund.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here and to be among Reggie and the administrator and Mark, and to present to you all on the basics and the nitty-gritty as well of the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. Registrations open this morning at 9 a.m. Eastern at restaurants.sba.gov. And so you can go in and register for the portal, and we want to get you all prepared for the application opening on Monday, May 3rd at 12 p.m. Eastern. So we can go right into the slides. First, to start off, just give a basic overview. The fund is $28.6 billion that are going to be awarded as grants, not loans, to eligible entities. And if you got PPP, if you received EIDL, and the employee retention tax credit, you are still eligible for this program, and you can receive funding from the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. The grants themselves are up to $5 million per restaurant or $10 million per restaurant group. And you must use the funds on eligible expenses, which I'll walk you through, by March 11th, 2023. So the administrator extended the runway and the cover period as the statute allowed us to do, in order to give you the longest runway possible to use these funds, get relief to your business, and build back better than before the pandemic. Additionally, The statute itself set aside $5 billion for businesses with 2019 gross receipts of $500,000 or less. And Administrator Guzman wanted to build on top of that to really prioritize our smallest businesses. So we implemented 2 additional set-asides, $4 billion for those businesses with 2019 gross receipts between $500,000 and $1.5 million. And then a smaller set aside, $500 million for the smallest businesses with 2019 gross receipts of less than $50,000. Eligibility. So to figure out if you are actually eligible for this program, you can be a restaurant, but there's more on top of that. So as the Restaurant Revitalization Fund says, restaurants are eligible, but you could also be a bar, a saloon, a lounge, a tavern. You could be a snack or a non-alcoholic beverage bar like a coffee shop or an ice cream shop. And then we have, you could be a food truck, a food cart, or a food stand. You could be a caterer. And then we have some entities listed here where you are still eligible. We just need some additional documentation to ensure that the primary purpose of your business is to serve food and drink to the public. So bakeries, breweries, brew pubs, tasting rooms, tap rooms, wineries, and distilleries. You must provide documentation to show us that at least 33% of your 2019 gross receipts were in on-site sales to the public. If you didn't open in 2019, you opened in 2020, or you haven't opened yet, your original business plan had to contemplate at least 33% in on-site sales. For inns, there's also this additional documentation, which is 33% of on-site sales of food and beverage to the public in 2019. So we have a wide array of eligible entities here, and you could fall under any of these, or there is an other category on the application for businesses whose primary purpose is to serve food and drink to the public, and you will also have to provide that documentation proving that you exceed that 33% threshold. Great, so we can't talk about eligibility without also being explicit about who is not eligible. So if you are a state or local government operated business, you are not eligible for this fund. If you have a pending or received a shuttered venues operators grant, you are not eligible. If you are a publicly traded company, you're not eligible. If you are permanently closed or have filed Chapter 11 liquid bankruptcy or Chapter 7, 11, 12, and 13 bankruptcy, but you are not under an approved plan of reorganization, you are not eligible for this fund. If you're a nonprofit organization, you're not eligible. And if you're not eligible for funding of at least $1,000. I skipped this one on the list because I wanted to really emphasize it at the end. The other big piece of eligibility is that if you, as of March 13th, 2020, own or operate together with affiliates more than 20 locations, regardless of if they are doing business under the same name or if they are an eligible entity, you are not eligible for this program. So if you have 16 restaurants and 6 dry cleaners, you are not eligible for this program. Okay, what can you actually use these funds for? So this is another great piece of this program, we believe, and it's because you can use these funds for a wide array of eligible expenses. We like to split them up into categories. So first, you can think of your business expenses, includes payroll costs, utility payments, maintenance expenses, business supplies that could include PPE, masks, and other cleaning materials that you had to take on during the pandemic. Business food and beverage expenses, which includes raw materials. So if you're a brewery and you need the supplies to actually make your beer, that is included here. Covered supplier costs and business operator expenses, which could include marketing fees, legal fees, maybe your point of sale servicing fee, any normal ordinary operation expenses are included. For construction expenses, you can use these funds to construct outdoor seating, And that is because in the pandemic, restrictions were put in place on dining, indoor dining, outdoor dining. So if you built out a patio to accommodate that or to kind of pivot, then you can use these funds on those expenses. You cannot use these funds to construct a new location or to expand your restaurant, or if you haven't opened yet, you cannot use these funds for build out costs. So the limitation on construction expenses is really to this outdoor seating piece. On business debt, this is what sets apart this program from some of our other relief programs. So you can use these funds for payments on any business mortgage obligation, both principal and interest. You cannot use it to prepay your business mortgage obligation, but you can use it for regularly scheduled payments. You can also use it for business debt service, which could include any other SBA loans you might have, so 7A loans, 504, or any other business debt that you have, both principal and interest. And again, it doesn't include any prepayments. So you couldn't, for example, pay off your idle loan ahead of time, or accelerate that, but you could pay the regularly scheduled payments. Maybe you set aside a portion of your funds to make those regularly scheduled payments over the course of the covered period through March 2023. Great. And how much money can I actually get here? So we have three main calculations to think about when you are looking at your funding. And calculation one is probably the simplest. So this is for applicants who opened prior to or on January 1st, 2019. And for this calculation, you'll take your 2019 gross receipts, subtract your 2020 gross receipts, and subtract any PPP loan amounts that you have. And so really the purpose of this fund is to replace those revenues lost in 2020 due to the pandemic. And this calculation is the clearest way to see that for those who were open prior to 2019. If you opened partially through 2019, you actually have two options. At your discretion, you could choose to use calculation 2 or calculation 3. So to start off with calculation 2, you would take your average monthly gross receipts and multiply them by 12, and that'll get you your annualized 2019 gross receipts as your base of the calculation. Then you subtract your 2020 gross receipts and you subtract any PPP loan amounts you have. So if I opened on July 1st and I have 6 months of 2019 gross receipts, I would divide that by 6, multiply it by 12, and I have my 2019 annualized gross receipts, and then I would subtract any 2020 gross receipts and any PPP. And then calculation 3, this is for folks, if you open partially through 2019 and you choose to use calculation 3, or if you began operations after or in 2020, or maybe you haven't yet opened and you incurred eligible expenses that we just walked through between February 15th, 2020 and March 11th, 2021, then you can use this formula. And if you opened in 2021. So the want to use this calculation is maybe you opened on December 26th, 2019, and you only have a few days of sales. And so you want to opt to use calculation 3 here. So what you'll do, just want to finish going through the calculation 3. So if you'll add up eligible expenses between February 15th, 2020 and March 11th, 2021. So any, construction, operating expenses, et cetera, add those up, that's your base. You subtract your 2020 gross receipts. You subtract any 2021 gross receipts you have through March 11th, and then you subtract your PPP loan amounts. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Awesome. So some sample calculations. First, you have your 2019 gross receipts of 2.5 million. Your 2020 gross receipts were 800,000, and you got $500,000 in PPP loans. So as I mentioned, this one is the most straightforward calculation. You take that 2.5 million number, subtract your 2020 gross receipts, $800,000, and then subtract your PPP $500,000 to get a $1.2 million grant amount. Calculation 2. So you have your September through December sales numbers here. You would add all of those up and divide by 4 for your average monthly sales amount. Multiply that number, that $287,500 by 12 to get 3.45 million. And that's your annualized 2019 gross receipts number. Then you subtract your 2020 gross receipts, 1.25 million. And then you subtract the total PPP amount here, 700,000, and you get your $1.5 million grant amount. And calculation 3. So this business opened in 2020, February 2020. So they're calculating, adding up their eligible expenses between February 15th, 2020 and March 11th, 2021 to get to $725,000. And then they had some sales in 2020 through March 11th, 2021 of $350,000. And so you take $725,000 of those expenses minus $350,000 of those gross receipts minus $125,000 in PPP to get a total grant of $250,000. So when we're talking about 2020 gross receipts, we know that there are a number of ways you might have gotten assistance. And to further be clear, you do not want to include in your 2020 gross receipts any PPP loans. So we're backing those out in the calculation. So you should not include them in your gross receipts number. And that includes both first and second draw PPP loans. You should not include any SBA Section 1112 payments. So any debt relief that you got, any EIDL loans, EIDL advance, targeted EIDL advance, or any other grant funds received via CARES Act or otherwise in 2020. Any state and local business grants. And then this last one is pretty specific for some specific entities, but it's the Randolph-Shepard Act financial relief and restoration payments. So another form of assistance that you do not need to include in your gross receipts. Great, so using those funds, you must spend your funds on expenses that were or will be incurred between February 15th, 2020 and March 11th, 2023. So you can use your funds on past due expenses that were incurred in that time period and pay those off or make those current. If the business permanently closes after receiving the funds, the covered period ends at whichever comes sooner, the date of permanently closing or March 11th, 2023. And any funds that are not spent on eligible expenses by the time this covered period ends, you must return to the government. So PPP, just to dive into this piece here, any funds that you already received through the program, as we talked about, are going to be subtracted from the final funding amount. And we're verifying those using the EIN, ITIN, or Social Security number that you enter in your application, and that's associated with your PPP loans. So we check it against the database of PPP loans and associate it that way. If you received a PPP loan, you should use the same EIN number for your RF application, and we'll be cross-checking it against our data as well. And then additionally, we know you might have applied for a PPP in different ways between first draw and second draw. And so if you applied for your first draw PPP for multiple locations under one EIN, and then you applied for your second draw PPP under different EINs, maybe the ones that could show that 25% reduction that applied to PPP, then you must provide any EINs that are relevant to your application. So while we'll fill in the first and second draw associated with the EIN on the application, for example, you're applying through that parent company EIN, we look up the two or one, in this case, loan for the first draw that's associated with that EIN, and then you will manually enter. There'll be a slot to fill in more EINs. You'll enter those other associated EINs for the individual locations that received the second draws. And upon applying for RF, you must withdraw any outstanding PPP application. So because the calculation is dependent on the PPP loans, you cannot receive any PPP loans after applying to RRF. Great. Priority business entities. So one of the great things in this legislation is this explicit priority period, and the priority period is 21 days for small business concerns that are at least 51% owned, and the management and daily business operations are controlled by one or more individuals who are women, veterans, or socially and economically disadvantaged. So you'll be certifying this on the application, and entity reorganization for explicit purposes of qualifying for this priority period will result in automatic disqualification of the award. This data will be made public, and so that you cannot lie on this application, and you should take it very seriously when you're self-certifying here. Great. So to go into what socially disadvantaged and economically disadvantaged actually means. So socially disadvantaged individuals, the definition is here. There is some presumed individuals who fall into this category and therefore are also economically disadvantaged. It's the list enumerated in the legislation is Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, Native Americans, including Alaska Natives and Native Hawaiians, and Asian Pacific Americans or subcontinent Asian Americans. On top of this list, LGBTQ is socially disadvantaged, and disabled Americans fall under socially disadvantaged. You'll just also have to be able to certify to economically disadvantaged. But if you can certify to that, then you would qualify under this priority group. Another thing to highlight on the priority groups is that you can mix and match. So if you're a small business concern and you have multiple owners, as we learned in our outreach, many restaurants do, maybe you have 5 owners and each has 20% ownership. One of those 20% is a woman. Another owner who has 20% is a Black male. And then another owner with 20% is a veteran. And they're all different people. That would reach 60% in the priority groups, and you could self-certify to that priority group qualification. How to apply. So this is the exciting part. We're really approaching the application date. You can apply through SBA at restaurants.sba.gov starting Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern time, May 3rd, and you can register for your account now. Registrations went live at 9 a.m. So this is the first day you can actually register. What's involved in registering is entering your email, getting your password set up, doing your 2-factor authentication with your phone number, and getting all set for when the application goes live in your portal Monday at noon. If you use Square or Toast, you can actually apply directly through them. So those folks are pushing out notifications to their customers so that they can apply directly through the Square or Toast site. And those applications get sent directly to SBA. It's really in your best interest, if you are one of those customers, to apply through these partners, we believe, because they'll have all of the data that we're looking for in a streamlined way, kind of pre-populated way for you. So all your gross receipts numbers and point of sale documentation that goes with those numbers, they will have. If you are a Clover or an Aloha customer, they'll have some pre-packaged statements for you that have your gross receipts numbers for your calculations and the documentation you need to upload for SBA validation. So you'll still apply at restaurants.sba.gov, but they'll have a page on their site that shows you what to download so that you can bring it to the SBA site. And if you're applying through Square and Toast, you don't need to register this weekend at the SBA platform. Additionally, we know that not everyone has access to the internet, and you might need to apply by telephone. So you can do so with the number on the screen, 279-8898. We do strongly encourage you, if you have a way to get to internet access, maybe you have to drive a little bit. We know that's difficult and it's not available to everyone, but we do encourage, if you do have that ability, to do so, because the telephonic applications will have slightly longer processing times due to the nature of mailing the application back and forth, and the requirement of a notary in order to validate and protect against fraud on the application form. So your documents. There'll be a very explicit list in the application portal as well, but the basic documentation that you'll need includes the application, which you won't actually have to print anything out or save any PDFs. You'll fill that out at SBA or at Toast and Square. Your tax verification is your IRS form 4506T. Again, you don't need to have anything saved or filled here. We will serve this to you in the application portal, so you won't have to upload any 4506T. It'll be pre-populated for you to DocuSign at the end of the application. Gross receipts documentation. So any of the following documents are accepted, and I'll talk through some of the ones that are kind of preferred for the most thorough and best review for the SBA. So 2019 taxes are required. So you will have to have your tax returns for 2019. For 2020, we understand that you might not have filed your taxes yet. If you have, that is the best form of documentation. But if you haven't, understanding that, there are other ways that you can demonstrate your 2020 gross receipts. So first is point of sale reports. So maybe you don't use Square, Toast, Clover, or Aloha. You can still download what you might use, Upserve, or maybe use Revel. You can download your report from there on your point of sale gross receipts, and that can be a form of documentation. And additionally, maybe you had to pivot in 2020 and you started doing more delivery. So you have a DoorDash report that has some additional sales. You'd upload that to get gross receipts numbers. And then other gross receipt documentation that we'll accept is externally or internally prepared financial statements, authorized, dated, and signed by the applicant. If you are able to get a kind of third-party accountant or CPA comfort letter to go along with those financial statements, that's even better, but we know not everyone has access to that, so it's definitely not required. And for eligible expenses, you can upload those internally or externally prepared financial statements. You can upload invoices demonstrating the construction of outdoor seating or operating expenses, as long as you have every piece of documentation that gets to that full eligible expense number. And then finally, the 3 most recent months of bank statements will be required as well to validate your bank account and validate the business information. If you are entities I called out earlier, winery, brewery, distillery, bakery, or inn, or you're in that other category, you'll have to evidence that your on-site sales were comprised of at least 33%, or that comprised at least 33% of your gross receipts for 2019. Some documentation examples include TTB forms, state or local sales tax forms that you filed, or internally created reports from your inventory management software or accounting software as well. Awesome. Application support. So we do have a call center. It's Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And the hotline is here. It's 1-844-279-8898. You can call the hotline and answer and ask any of your questions. And if you stump us, we're also taking all the records of questions down and uploading them into a Knowledge Management Center, and that's linked at our website at sba.gov/restaurants in the How to Get Help Applying section. It's the first link in that section. And there's a bunch of, it's basically like a living database of Q&A that we've received, and we reply with answers. Our policy team is filling out answers every single day, and there's technical support in there as well. So things like my password reset won't work. You can also find that there. So we have the call center. We urge you to call there with any of your questions. Your local SBA district offices are a good resource, but they might direct you to the call center because we set this up explicitly with RRF in mind, and we have a dedicated staff to RRF at the call center. And we have both English and Spanish directly, and then the ability to three-way message in over 30 languages at the call center. So it's a really great resource if you have any questions. Additionally, I know I said the hours are Monday to Friday. But we do have a few staff members over the weekend to help with any registration issues if those come up now that folks are starting to register. Okay, best practices. So we're almost there to application day. We want you to be as ready and feel as prepared as you possibly can. So please, please, please come with your complete documentation. Incomplete documentation is going to be rejected, and then we'll go through the review. We'll have to go through the review process again. So we really urge you to come with all of that documentation prepared and ready. And it shows all of your gross receipts numbers. It has all of your eligible expenses. And if there's maybe a discrepancy between your tax returns and the gross receipts number you entered for 2020, because you subtracted those Section 1112 payments, maybe you add in a cover page or you upload a document explaining that. That could be really helpful for us. Additionally, leverage your resources. So leverage these webinars. We have recorded webinars on sba.gov/resources. We have a recorded webinar that walks you through the application portal and essentially the same material overview on the program as well. So you can watch those at your leisure to get prepared. And additionally, of course not required, but if you have access or the ability to use CPAs or other accounting professionals, they can help ensure a complete and well-documented application. SBA is not able to make corrections for your applications, but if you do require a correction, you can contact the call center hotline to do so. And then, as I mentioned, for PPP, we're coming down to the wire here. So if you don't have an approved PPP application, it's still pending, then we urge you to withdraw that so that you can be eligible for RRF, or contact your lender to withdraw that application. Great. So we made it through the material. Want to open it up for any questions we can help answer.
Yes, thanks so much, Nicola. Really appreciate you sharing all of that information. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lauren Schweppe. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm the Educational Initiatives Manager at NGLCC. So as Nicola mentioned, we're going to move into the Q&A portion of today's program. So please feel free to continue to put your questions in the chat or utilize the Q&A function. So we have already had a few questions come in so far. One question that came in, if a business received PPP2 at 3.5 times and have a 72 NACIS number, would there be any reason that business would not qualify for the fund?
I don't see a reason in that information given. You do have to satisfy all of the other eligibility criteria, so the 20 or less, not a publicly traded company, etc. But based on that information, I don't think I hear any reason why it would be ineligible.
Great. Another question that came in, I'm constantly hearing that the demand for this program will exceed the 28.6 billion allocated. What is the likelihood that additional funds will be made available for the hardest hit industry in this pandemic?
That's a great question. And I think we totally hear you. And that's ultimately up to Congress if we can replenish these funds, but that is why we're urging everyone to apply as soon as possible on Monday at noon, so we can share what that demand is and really inform Congress, so that hopefully they can re-up these funds if they're needed.
Great. Another question, if I use PayPal, would they be able to give me the point of sales that the application is asking for?
Oh, that's a great question. If PayPal is your point of sale that provides your gross receipts number, if you can download some documentation from them, that would satisfy that point of sale documentation requirement. If you have other gross receipts outside of PayPal, then you would just need to also supply documentation for those other gross receipts.
Great. Another question we had come through, is depreciation an eligible expense?
That might be a stump the presenter question. I think it might actually be in our knowledge management base. So I would say, since I do not know right now, you should check there. If you go to sba.gov/restaurants and go to the how to get help applying section, it's the first link, or call this call center. And I will also take it back and make sure it's in that knowledge management center, so that when you do go looking, it is actually there to help you.
Great. Another question, the shuttered venue funds allow funds to be used for advertising and marketing. Can funds from this fund be used for advertising, marketing, or membership to the LGBTQ chambers for marketing?
Yeah, so we had kind of considered marketing or advertising in those business operating expenses. And so those would be an eligible use of funds.
Great. Someone asked, my restaurant opened on October of 2019. We're building it out and had no sales. Our first sales were in February of 2020, and then we had to close until November of 2020 and then reopened. Do I use the second step to apply or the third step?
That's a good question. So I think what I heard is that you opened for the first time in February 2020. Did I hear that right?
First sales were February 2020. They first opened their restaurant in October of 2019.
Okay, great. So yeah, since you opened partially through 2019, you could use, if that was when you made your first sale, you could use either table 2 or table 3, which is either the annualized 2019 gross receipts as your base, or table 3, which is the eligible expenses as your base. If you made your first sales in 2020, then you can use table 3 because you wouldn't have any 2019 gross receipts. So you would just calculate up the eligible expenses between February 15th, 2020 and March 11th, 2021. And that would be your base. And then you subtract any receipts that you had in 2020. So even maybe you partially closed for the year, but whatever you had in gross receipts in 2020, you subtract. And then any gross receipts you had through March 11th, 2021, you subtract those as well. And then any PPP loans. So it sounds like if you partially open in 2019, you can choose either 2 or 3. If you open in 2020, you would default to table 3 because you don't have any 2019 receipts.
Great. Thanks so much, Nicola. That's about all the time that we have this morning for Q&A. But again, for anyone whose questions were not answered, you can use the SBA call line or reach out to your local SBA district office. So that will conclude today's program. I want to give another huge thank you to the administrator, Mark and Nicola at the Small Business Administration, for providing us with this vital information. Big thank you to our partners at PPSI for helping us put this together. Huge thank you to Reggie for your constant support of the LGBT business community. And finally, a big thank you to all of our collaborating affiliate chambers and all of you for attending today. That concludes our programming, but again, for any additional questions, please use the call line or reach out to your local district office. We will be sending out a recording of today's webinar, which can also be accessed on the NGLCC YouTube page. And you can also visit the SBA's page on their website about the fund. So once again, thank you to all of our speakers and collaborating partners for today's program. Thank you all for attending, and I hope you have a great rest of your Friday and weekend ahead.